How did people endure and resist slavery in the British colonies? In the 1700s, places like Virginia and South Carolina were crucial to Britain's economy, using large plantations to meet Europe's huge demand for tobacco and rice. Enslaved Africans were the main workers. On a Virginia tobacco farm, they did everything from field work to processing tobacco for export, showing their critical role in the economy. In South Carolina, rice plantations worked like modern factories, where these people were treated as mere parts of a machine. Records show that by the mid-18th century, colonies like Virginia sent over 50 million pounds of tobacco back to Europe each year, mostly produced by enslaved workers. Moving north to New England, this picture shifts slightly. The smaller farms in places like Massachusetts, established largely by the early 1600s, required fewer workers. Unlike the vast plantations of the South, these farms were more like family-run businesses that occasionally needed extra help. Enslaved people played a significant role in busy port cities like Boston, fulfilling duties in homes and docks, which helped the local economy grow, albeit in a more fragmented way. This later use of enslaved labor, compared to the South, shows how the system adapted to meet different regional needs. The West Indies saw an even more extreme dependency on enslaved labor. By the 1720s, sugar plantations operated under relentless demands, similar to modern assembly lines, producing enormous quantities of sugar. For instance, in Jamaica, enslaved workers toiled in backbreaking conditions to maintain sugar as the main export. The economic gain for British owners was vast. Sugar had become the crown jewel of colonial exports, but the human cost was staggering. People were commodified and worked to exhaustion. By the mid-1700s, the West Indies made up more than 60% of Britain's imports from its colonies, underscoring the key role of sugar made by enslaved workers. Amid these harsh conditions, the spirit of resistance was strong. Olaudah Equiano, an African captured in 1756 and later able to buy his freedom, became a big voice in the fight against slavery. His autobiography, published in 1789, detailed the brutal conditions of slavery and inspired many others. His story, like that of Mary Prince, who published her experiences in 1831, showed the horrors and strong will of enslaved individuals. Prince's account of her work in the salt ponds of the West Indies helps illustrate the intense physical labor involved, making clear the heavy cost borne by those forced into servitude. Resistance took many forms, from organized uprisings to small, everyday acts of defiance. The Stono Rebellion in 1739 stands as a powerful example. Enslaved Africans in South Carolina seized weapons and marched towards freedom, declaring their desire for liberty. Though the rebellion was ultimately crushed, it symbolized a deep yearning for freedom that could not be extinguished. Other forms of resistance were more subtle, but no less powerful. Work slowdowns, deliberate sabotage, maintaining cultural traditions, and secretly educating children. These quiet acts of rebellion were like sparks that kept hope alive, even in the darkest times. The economic impact of slavery on Britain cannot be overstated. The wealth generated from colonial goods like tobacco, rice, and sugar fueled not only the fortunes of plantation owners, but also the growth of entire industries in Britain, including textiles, shipping, and banking. Liverpool and Bristol, for example, became bustling ports due to their involvement in the transatlantic slave trade, with local economies thriving on the back of this brutal system. It's as if the colonies acted as factories, producing raw materials that were then transformed into immense wealth in Britain. While the British Empire eventually moved to end the slave trade in 1807 and slavery within its colonies by 1833, the newly formed United States continued to expand and entrench slavery long after gaining independence. This reveals a deep contradiction. A nation born from a fight for liberty continued to deny freedom to millions based on race, creating a legacy of inequality that still impacts discussions on race and justice today. Why did the United States, after fighting for its independence, continue to support slavery while Britain moved to abolish it? How did the economic benefits of slavery shape the development of Britain? And what impact did this have on global power dynamics? In what ways did the resistance efforts of enslaved people influence the eventual abolition of slavery? How do the historical examples of resilience and oppression still resonate in today's conversations about equality and justice?